Let's bring on our guest, Jonathan.
Yeah, our guest today is Jet Bowling, a guy who's been on the show before, 19-year-old from Dallas, Texas. He's currently fighting for the FR Americas title here in the USA, the only FIA championship outside of that and Formula 4. He's already done Formula 4. And he's now doing FR. He was in New Zealand with us. He got the lap record at Road America last time out. His name, Jet Bowling, and he's just watched what we just watched, and I'm really interested to get his take.
Jet, tell us what you think of what you just saw with Max Verstappen.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. Yeah, it was pretty dramatic end to what I thought was, not a boring race, but, you could see the end from quite early on, but that was pretty wild. I don't know what happened. I think, the commentator said it best. I think the red mist got to him. I certainly know if I came in on hard tires on a 8-lap restart, I would be pretty upset as well.
Well, Jet,
let's not forget.
Go ahead, Bob.
Preceding all the collisions, all the yelling, and all that kind of stuff, Max pulled off an incredible save coming onto the restart off that fast final corner and almost throwing the thing in the trees, but he managed to keep it going straight, and then all the passing and conflict ensued. But that was a hell of a save.
Yeah, a hell of a save after a giant mistake. But yeah, go ahead, Jet.
Yeah, just, you watch these F1 cars, and, the drivers are so talented, but it's so hard to make an F1 car have a moment like that nowadays. Mm-hmm. It just has so much aero, so much, tire grip. That was the first time I've seen a car move like that, and I don't even know how long. To save that, and that's such a dangerous spot. You see how close the walls are. That definitely don't agree with that. Yeah, I think it was maybe understandable up until the point with the contact with Russell. That's just you never want to hear you need to let this person by as a racer. You just always want to be in front, and then to go and purposely kind of dive bomb someone is just not okay, and especially when you have such a racer like Max, who has, multiple world champion, probably will be another champion coming soon. Just not what you want to see. You are the pinnacle of racing right now, and that's just not the sportsmanship you want to see from a guy like that.
Yeah. Well put. Jet, let me ask you this. There's something to be learned, I think, even from what Verstappen did today. And you obviously have sussed onto that there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And that includes, when you're a pro race driver, handling conflict, handling stress, handling controversy. And would you agree that Max didn't do a particularly good job of that today?
Yeah, right. I think he sort of failed at that point. You saw there was a lot of instances, between the two Ferraris where, it's been multiple races now where, Leclerc and Hamilton are going at it saying, let me be in front. And then you saw there's a tiny clip today, George Russell's going past Antonelli. He gives him a wave as he lets him by. It's stuff like that shows that the grid is professional. And I think the emotions were high for Max. No doubt the adrenaline was through the roof after that, huge snap and the contact with Leclerc. But, it's unacceptable to have that kind of behavior, honestly.
I couldn't agree more. And Jet, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but we're going to put out a video of you at Road America this week, and when you see what Jet was up against at Road America and then bounces back and keeps his head under what was terrible circumstances for him, frustrating-wise, in terms of being the fastest guy all weekend, and then, basically keeping his head to get a second place to his arch rival, it was the epitome of how you keep your head as a sportsman. And so it's actually kind of somewhat kismet that you're on today, because we just saw a bad example, and I think you put on a great example last week, which the folks can have a look at this week. But yeah, it's all a learning curve, but it's a big part of racing, the mentality side of it, and keeping your cool, right?
Yeah, right. That's a big part of it. I mean, no doubt, it's high stress, especially when you have a snap like that. I had a similar thing in my race restart at Road America.
Yeah.
Huge snap on the exit curb. Obviously, it costs you a lot of time down the straight, and you go into defense mode. And, it's so easy to just want to, push people off, but you just have to understand. You have to respect the sport and respect what it is. You make a mistake, you can't make that other people's mistake.
You know what, guys? There's also, I just stumbled across a story from Andrew Benson, BBC.
Ah, yeah.
So a legitimate news source, and the headline is, Stroll lost temper after the feature. So we're talking about Lance Stroll, all this about his injury, and now he's saying that he was breaking things in the garage and swearing at team members.
He broke his wrist.
Well, what I'm wondering is if he actually did injure himself with that. I don't know. I'm just speculating right now. But my point is,
we've seen this before.
Yeah.
We've seen this before from Lance. Remember that time he got out of the car, walked to the back of the garage, and shoved somebody?
Yeah. Yeah, so the whole weekend now is all about drivers behaving badly.
Yeah, at the moment. Hey, Jet, that actually brings up a good point. We were talking pre-race, and I'm sure you've read the news that Stroll is now, well, obviously didn't take part in the race, but he's now going to have a procedure which could put him out of the Canadian Grand Prix. And we all smiled and went, oh, great, Crawford's going to get a chance. But we were wrong. He doesn't have the super license yet. And so then it's down to Drogovic and Stoffel Van Dorn. But both of them are racing at Le Mans. So are you free next weekend?
Yeah.
But this guy is
Right, that'd be
high school
a dream,
junior.
huh?
His name is Marcelo.
But it's an opportunity for somebody, and even Bottas' name has been
On his way to that 7:45 a.m. volleyball practice.
Wow.
Saturday morning. He was carpooling with some of his
Well,
teammates.
I have a page full of notes to talk about it, but man,
throw it out the window.
yeah, throw it all out the
His
window.
coaches thought.
I mean, it was a good race before that, but it just got very tasty. This whole thing started with Verstappen being put on the wrong tyres, and Jet immediately went there and said, if I'd have been put on 8 laps to go, he was wrong by the
only option.
Well, okay, but he didn't understand that at the time. But that's why he was leading on to getting out.
Saturday morning, and Trump's immigration agents
predicting
pulled
that
him
we're going
over,
to see
and they
a lot of
arrested this kid Marcelo. Again, he is a high school junior.
back and forth
Fallout,
on
yeah.
social media about why not just give these cars all the tires they need.
This is a kid with
Why not just let them go?
Let him go racing.
Good point.
But
to have ever been in any kind of trouble.
But that's part of the
Again, he's
strategy.
a
That's
high school
the point
junior
is to
honor
shake
student
things up, which is
on the
exactly what they
volleyball
did
team
today.
in the high school band.
They made life very difficult for Max Verstappen. You can tell from his radio transmissions, he wasn't even thinking about the hard tire. It's like, what tire is this? He could tell he was sliding around immediately.
Just have a lawyer
And
arguing for him to try to get
I'm
him
amazed
before
that they
a
hadn't
judge
gone over
tried
that,
getting him
or
out.
maybe told him ahead of time, look,
But
all we've got
that is who
is
Trump's
a set of
agents
cards.
took
We're going to put you on them and
Saturday morning in Milford,
go with
Massachusetts.
God.
I'll tell you what are some great other stories. What about the Hulk?
Sunday morning,
Yeah,
it was
Hulkenberg. I
graduation
got
day.
to
Yeah,
look
how
at the
about that?
finishing order here with everybody because it was
And
so
at the
crazy
graduation
at the end
ceremony in
there.
Milford,
How about Alonso?
I know, Alonso's in the point.
First points of the season for Alonso.
He can make the cover of AARP now.
and then as soon as the ceremony was over, the whole school
I mean,
marched
but never mind.
Well,
straight from the graduation.
well, this is sounding more and more like that great British expression. This is the time they threw their toys out of the pram.
That's it. Yeah,
Grand Prix.
that's exactly right.
Yes.
A Massachusetts town is
Well, let's just
shaken
run down the
by
order
a
because
high
if you
school
were
junior
listening to it like us, you weren't even
Good evening,
so much
everyone.
focused on the
Thanks
front.
so
So
much for joining us at 11.
obviously
I'm
Oscar
Sam
Piastri
Brown.
wins,
This
followed by
is
Lando
Tuesday
Norris,
before the
Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Hulkenberg down in 5th. Wow. Lewis Hamilton 6th, Isaac Hadjar, great finish for him, and then Gasly right behind him in 8th, Alonso in 9th, Verstappen finishing down in 10th position, almost out of the points, followed by Liam Lawson. We got lots to talk about with Liam
Oh,
Lawson.
my word.
Bortoletto, Sonoda made it up to 13th from 20th, Carlos Sainz down at 14th, Colapinto, Ocon, Behrman, and then Antonelli and Albon did not finish the race. Antonelli with a power unit failure, and Albon with some damage after contact with Liam Lawson.
Jet, we're sorry because we went straight into that for you and put you on the
I
spot.
know.
But who's your go-to? I mean, I know you follow Formula One like all the other drivers and IndyCar. Who's your go-to? What was your assessment? Is there anybody you want to pick out from watching it yourself?
I think Piastri drove a great race. I was the most impressed with him. It's easy to say out front. It's easy to say, he has the quickest car, but I was so impressed by his first stint on the softs. I mean, he drove it, I think, 25 laps, where Max only did about 15. That's so impressive to me. Having driven around the circuit, I know that all those long left corners, like 3, 4, 13 or 14, they really load that front left and it starts graining, like Lando said. But to be as quick as he was, quicker than his teammate, and to keep the tires that long, that was really impressive to me.
That's spot on, Jet. Thank you. I'm glad you brought us back to that, because that's a really good point.
Hey, Sonoda 13, I'm amazed.
I know.
From pit lane.
Yeah, from pit lane. Yeah.
And how about Carlos Sainz? Even though Sainz saw his streak of successive points finishes at his home Grand Prix broken, he was tail end Charlie at one point. He drove all the way up to 14th, so not a bad effort under the circumstances with a car that apparently didn't agree with him at all.
Yeah, very good point, no doubt. And you know what, guys? We also, Casey, those are Medlin's. We have some comments from Chris Medlin, because he's on doing F1 TV right now. He may not be able to join us. We don't know, but he sent in some comments. I'm very excited.
Laura Winters yeah.
Hugging?
No, she's basically keeping him.
She's keeping him, holding him. Yes. All right, well, let's hear Chris Medlin's thoughts on today's Grand Prix.
I do not know where to start with that, guys. I will admit that was outrageous at the end of that race. I totally understand that Max was going to be frustrated with what happened in terms of the strategy he got, but the way he reacted to George and allowing him by just blows my mind. I really do not understand it. I'm really hoping we get some explanations now that the checker flag has come down and the drivers will come and talk about it, but I fear that was Max just losing his cool because he was so frustrated at a race that he'd worked so hard to be in against all odds, which he had done a brilliant job to up to then. So Red Bull, fair play to them for that strategy. That had been very impressive. But then he just seemed to completely lose it. And I feel like that was almost him letting out his frustration at the way the circumstances have played out poorly for him, and maybe at the team too. But if that was the case, I don't think 10 seconds is anywhere near enough of a penalty, if I'm honest with you all. I don't think you can just allow a driver just to get away with a 10-second time penalty for using their car as a weapon. And that's exactly what he did there. It was considered, wasn't it? Because he backed off, he slowed down. So, maybe I'm being premature here, and we're going to hear him speak later in the show, and these thoughts will need revising. But right now, I am blown away by that, and I think he's really tainted what was an excellent drive. So I'm going to go and run around and speak to some team bosses and get some opinions from them. Hopefully I can get a few of them for us on the show as well a bit later on when I join you all. But as that one's gone, that's a real surprise the way that's all panned out at the end. And I think we're going to be talking about this one for a long time. But I don't think that will be the end of it, actually, for Max.
Brilliant from Chris, as usual.
As
Jonathan,
always.
he said exactly what. Well, remember what I said when I saw it? I was like, he should be disqualified from this race. And when you walk back in from going to the restroom, I was like, he only got a 10-second penalty.
I know.
That was.
I was amazed at that, and I agree with Chris. You can't use a car as a weapon. It's
That's
a fact.
the phrase right there.
I was in Jet's driving briefing the other day, and they warn these guys, play nice, especially at that level. And to see it at the highest level like this is just a no-no. That's bannable. That is bannable. Race bannable.
Yeah, and Jet, we've got Jet Bowling as our guest, and Jet, I want to ask you about. There's been so much discussion about Oscar Piastri being the new Iceman, and that's what you said it a little bit, Jet, earlier. But this is what makes a really special race driver or race drivers, that they can maintain the mental control in the firestorm of a race. And now Max, the gold standard of race drivers in the world right now, has just completely lost it. Jet, I mean, I'm assuming that this is a lot of discussions with you guys as young drivers about how to hold your composure.
Yeah, I think so much of it honestly comes down to just, trusting your team and trusting the strategist. For our Red Bull put on such a good strategy today, to get that car into the top three. And, they gambled, and unfortunately the safety car came out and hards was all they had. So I think Max, just needs to accept that. He needs to say, we took the gamble, the dice, they didn't fall our way. Fifth is, good points, but, he makes a move like that, and where does it put him? It puts him 10th. Piastri gains 26 points because he got the fast lap, and, Max gains 1. So, that maybe, I don't want to say the championship's over,
Yep.
There's a long way to go, but, as a racing driver, it's so hard to see, the guy in front of you gain 25 points. And so that's where the maturity comes in,
It's okay.
which is shocking. I think if this was Max, 3-4 years ago, I would have said, okay, I don't condone it, but I understand it. But, as a guy who's won multiple world championships, you'd think you'd see some maturity and, some long-term thinking, but you don't really see that.
Yeah, trust your team with Jet. That's big. And Max didn't. What tire are we on? What is this tire? What have you given me?
Yeah.
The ride. He said the ride is broken.
Yeah, it's the chain is as strong as its weakest link, as they always used to say. But it's true. You cannot. You are all in it together. They're trying to make you win the race, or get as many points as possible. You can't throw the toys out the cot because something goes wrong that you're not happy about. This is going to be a frustrating year for Max Verstappen because he's not got the best car, and it's getting to him.
Yeah, and what Jet said, he's watching the season championship go away. Also, I'm sure Max. We've heard him talk about going to different races. Max is looking at the consecutive world championship record is Schumacher with 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Max maybe just saw that go away too, that potential record.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. That's a lot of speculation, but this is just so unprecedented right now in recent times, anyway.
Jed, I got another one for you. We've been talking all season long about the young guys, the new guys, and we may see another new guy, or at least a Drogovic, in the seat at Aston Martin for Canada. Who's impressed you of the guys that have stepped up from F2, whether it be Hadjar, Lawson, and the stories? It's been an up and down time for the rookies. But is there anyone that stands out to you?
I think Hadjar, he's the one that stands out to me the most. That car looks, really quick to drive, and it looks, nice. The second Red Bull, which is probably, the first Red Bull, honestly, on the grid right now. If it weren't for Verstappen's, pace, just Hadjar, he had a rough start to the season. Obviously, he didn't even do a lap in Australia in the race, but his pace has just been so phenomenal. He's had qualifying, he's been a couple top 10s, and he's been able to maintain it. A lot of these rookies, they can, squeeze one lap out in quali, and then, they struggle to maintain these Pirelli tires where, maybe it's the opposite. Maybe they struggle with quali and then they, move up. But, he's kind of been consistent in all the realms. So, it's nice to see a rookie that's consistent. I hope he can build upon that, in this future.
Yeah, look where he started, going off on the warm-up lap. Yeah, I mean, that must have been that's a McLaughlin moment, isn't it, from the 500?
Yeah,
I mean, he's done well. I mean, to be in the arms of Lewis Hamilton's father on your first race, that is not a good look. I remember that walk of shame, if you like, down the paddock lane, and I was almost in my head going, somebody give him a hug, or somebody put your arm around him, and there was Anthony Hamilton. Yep. So, that's where he began his season, and now look at him.
Would have been better if it was Leclerc's girlfriend to put her on.
Well,
Anthony Hamilton's okay too.
Oh man,
guys, I don't mean to upstage Jet here because he's our guest, but looking at the entirety of the day, starting with Lance Stroll pulling out of the race, apparently not informing his team that his wrist injury was going to prevent him from being able to race, and I called it unprofessional. I still think it was. And now, at the other end of the day, you got a 4-time world champion out there clouting everybody who doesn't do what he wants them to do. So that, there's so much to take away from this race from start to finish for a young driver, and what your responsibilities are to your team, to all the people, who busted their butts to put the car together and make it as good as it could be. It's not all about you, the driver.
Yeah.
It's about, that organization of 1,000 or more people who are counting on you.
Jet Bowling just said it. Trust your team. And unless you said from the start of the race, you remember what happened at the start of the race? Yeah. You remember the radio message from Toto Wolff, who was talking to George Russell? He was saying, concentrate, George.
Yeah.
You just lost multiple positions because George was complaining about
everybody moving under braking.
Yeah, moving under braking. Yeah.
Right.
And so we've had this has been the theme of the weekend. It's like, come on, everybody, let's this is a team sport. Trust your team, and let's let's stop all this immaturity.
Jed, I mentioned Scott Goodyear, your race director, and obviously he looks after F4, which you were in, and so he's been your race director for the last couple of years now. But does he use I mean, I know he gives you examples of what not to do and what to do. I've seen the videos and where you can be on track and what to avoid. But does he actually use F1 examples of no-nos to sort of keep you on the straight and narrow?
Yeah, not so much as, showing us literal videos of, what's not to do and what's to do, but he'll make I'm sure, we'll get to Indianapolis in, 2 weeks time,
Yep.
and he'll say, I don't want to see any, Max Verstappen, George Russell, I don't want to see somebody will make a joke like that, comment like that, I don't think he'll pull the video, pull the receipts out, but I think everybody in the room will know
Exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we've just watched the 500. You're going to be at Indianapolis, like you say, in a couple of weeks. But we've just watched the 500, and if that kind of behavior were to happen in that race, boy, there'd be hell to pay.
Oh, yeah. Can you imagine? Wow. Well, we're almost out of time for this segment. We want to thank Jet Bowling for coming on and
Give us your socials before you
Yeah.
go.
Yep, Instagram and Facebook at Jet Bowling Racing, Jet with 2 T's, bowling like a bowling alley. There's no spaces, and yeah, I'll be in Indianapolis in about 2 weeks' time, and Mid Ohio after that for Formula Regional Americas.
well, Jet, you showed your maturity today because that was spot on. What you said about Leclerc and what you said about trust your team, fantastic stuff, Jet. Thanks for joining us.
Here. Thanks, Jet.
Yep, thanks so
All
much
right.
for having me.
Cheers.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back right after this. Continue to talk about today's crazy
What a day.
activities. Back after this.